Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava Batra, page 110b, top of the page. It was the question of Ella and Abaya asked Rava, and rather, top of the page with words man, kuli liros, atu bar kasha dimasa liros, hachi kamina, ika ben ubas, lohai liros kule, lohai liros kule. Rather, who should inherit? Who then should inherit? Is it that to say that the ruler of the city should inherit? Rav Papa said to them, this is what I meant to say. If there is a son and a daughter, this one should not inherit all the estate, and that one should not inherit all the estate, but they should inherit it in equal portions to one another. Amrle Abaye. Abaye said to him, Lesle El Chad Bara, Lersinu de Kuluhu Nichse, Vidomo Hakamash Balan, de Bas Nami Bas Yerushahi, Ahu, Mi Vichal Ubas Yereshis Nachla Nafka. Abaye said to him, but is the verse necessary in order to teach us that when he has only one child, that child should inherit all of his property? If you say that the right of the son and daughter to the inheritance is equal, then the verse, if a man dies and has no son, Numbers 27 verse 8, which teaches that when there is no son, his daughter inherits, is superfluous. Rav Papa responded, and perhaps this verse teaches us this, that a daughter is also subject to receiving inheritance. The Gemara replies, no, the verse does not need to teach us this, since that halacha is derived from the verse in every daughter who possesses an inheritance, Numbers 36:8, which clearly states that a daughter is subject to receiving inheritance. Rav Bar Yaakov Amar Mehacha Lama Yigar Hashem Avinu B'Toich Mishpachtoi Ki Ein Lo Ben Taima De'Ein Lo Ben Hayesh Lo Ben Kodim. Rav Bar Yaakov said, the halacha that a son inherits his father's estate and precedes a daughter is derived from here. In the passage in the Torah where the daughters of Tzalafchad request their father's inheritance in Eretz Yisrael, they said to Moses, why should the name of our father be done away from among his family because he has no son? Numbers 27 verse 4. Rav Acha ben Yaakov infers the reason they requested the inheritance is that, as they said, he has no son. One can infer, but if he has a son, the son takes precedence and the daughters would not have requested an inheritance. The Gemara raises a difficulty, but perhaps it was the daughters of Tzalafchad who said this, meaning that they were entitled to an inheritance only because their father had no son. They thought that this was the halakha based on the custom at that time, but after God spoke to Moses, the Torah was given and a halakha was initiated that a daughter's right to inherit is equal to that of a son. The Gemara accepts this difficulty and states, rather, it is clear that the source for this halakha is, as we answered initially, as Abaya derived from the verse of, if a man dies and has no son, then you shall pass his inheritance to his daughter, Numbers 27 verse 8. Ravina Amar Mihacha, Hakarev Elov, Hakarev Kav Koidim. Ravina said the source for the halacha that a son precedes a daughter is from here. Who is next to him? Hakarov Elav, Numbers 27:11, teaching that the closer the karov one is to the deceased, the earlier one is in the order of inheritance, and a son of the deceased is considered to be a closer relative to the deceased than the daughter. Umay kurva de ben mi bas, sheben kam tarazov ivniada les de achuzo, Yaida bas lav bas Yaida hi Sedei achuza nami mehai pircha gufahi. Who? Dehakai male letana klum yeshibum ela bimkom shein ben ela machvardak kideshanin meikoho. The Gemara asks, what demonstrates the closeness of a son more than that of a daughter? That a son stands in place of his father to designate a Hebrew maidservant as a wife for himself, and with regard to an ancestral field, the Gemara rejects this. This is not a valid proof, as designation cannot demonstrate that a son is a closer relative. A daughter is not subject to designation because she obviously cannot marry the Hebrew maidservant. With regard to an ancestral field as well, the Tana establishes his ruling that a son is a closer relative than others from this same refutation. Is there levirate marriage except in a case where there is no son? And this applies also where there is no daughter. Rather, it is clear that the source for this halakha is as we answered initially. Ve'i ba'is e ma mehacha. Oh, whoops, sorry. Mehacha bisnachaltem o sam livnechem macharechem benechem v'lobnesechem eloyata leman yirbu mechem mibenechem hachanam mibenechem v'lobnesechem. And if you wish, say, instead that the halacha, which part was that to hear? Okay, anyway, if you wish, say, instead that the halacha that a son precedes a daughter is derived from here, is in the passage of the Torah addressing the inheritance of slaves, which states, and you may make them an inheritance for your son, Livnechem, after you, Leviticus 25:46. One can infer your sons, but not your daughters. The Gemara asks, is that so? Then when the verse states that your days may be multiplied, and the days of your sons, Deuteronomy 11:21, should one infer that this too means your sons, but not your daughters? Is it not obvious that daughters are also worthy of receiving blessing of longevity? Bracha Shani, the Gemara answers, the bracha is different. In the verse that speaks of blessings, the term Benechem should be understood in its broader sense. It's your children. In a verse that speaks of halacha, is to be understood in a narrower sense of your sons. Oh, I'm starting a new idea. In the Mishnah states, and paternal brothers inherit from one another and bequeath to one another. Minalan, how do we know this? Amarabba, Asya Achva, Ibnei Yaakov, Malahalan min Aav v'lo min ha'em, Avka min Aav v'lo min ha'em. From where do we derive this halacha? Rabba said, it is derived from a verbal analogy between the word brothers, stated with regard to inheritance, and the word brothers, found in the verses concerning Jacob's sons. When Jacob's sons speak to Joseph, they state, we, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan, Genesis 42:13. And in the passage discussing inheritance, the verse states, and if he has no brothers, then you shall give his inheritance to his father's brothers, Numbers 27:10. Just as in the verse concerning Jacob's sons, the word brothers is referring to paternal brothers and not maternal brothers, as the 12 of them shared only the same father. So to here, where this term is used with regard to inheritance, the verse is referring to paternal brothers and not maternal brothers. Ulama li mimishpachto v'yaresh ota ketiv mishpachat av kruya mishpacha mishpachas em eno kruya mishpacha. The Gemara asks, But why do I need this proof from the verse concerning Jacob's sons? It is written in the passage concerning inheritance, then you shall give his inheritance to his kinsman, who is next to him of his family, and he shall inherit it. Numbers 27:11. When the term family is used in the Bible, one's father's family is called one's family, while one's mother's family is not called one's family. So that in all matters of inheritance, it is the patrilineal relatives. If the mother's family is not considered one's family, then how could we say earlier that the mother's brother affects the sons if they're not family? I'll say, concerning this, not family. Concerning that, it is family. Yeah, there's always a way out. In Achinami, the Gemara answers yes, it is indeed, so that the verbal analogy is not needed to teach the halakha of inheritance. When Rabbah's explanation was stated, it was stated with regard to the matter of levirate marriage, teaching that levirate marriage is performed only by paternal brother, but not by maternal brother. Ve'ish et imo minahani mili detano abanan. The Mishnah teaches that a man with regard to his mother inherits from her relatives, but does not bequeath to her. The Gemara asks, from where are these matters derived? The Gemara answers, and the sages taught.